After the West trial, the government threatens to ban the buying up of witnesses. Good afternoon. The Lord Chancellor and the Attorney General have both signalled their deep unease at the number of witnesses in the Rosemary West trial who are bought up by the media. A change in the law banning such payments in court cases is being seriously considered. The other headlines of the case that up to 7 witnesses had received money from the media. The payments range from £750 to a possible £100,000.
Few trials have excited so much media interest as Rosemary West's, and few have raised as many fears about media payments to witnesses. Around 20 possible witnesses did deals with news organisations. Among them, Janet Leach, whose deal with Mirror Group newspapers could make her up to £100,000. Catherine Halliday, a former West neighbour, whose deal with the Sunday Mirror made her £8,000. Elizabeth Agius, another neighbour, who sold interviews to ITV and the BBC for £750 apiece, and Caroline Owens, a former victim, who sold her story to The Sun for £9,500 and another £10,500 payable after the trial. A lawyer for The Sun and the News of the World says such buy-ups, as they're called, do occur, but only in certain circumstances.
We are very careful about how we do it, when we do it. A newspaper, certainly in this group, would never buy the story of a witness until that witness had fully given his or her statement to the police, had attended whatever identity parades he or she had to attend, and the evidence that was intended to be given in court was absolutely crystallised before we go anywhere near them with a contract to buy their story.
But one media lawyer says payments should be banned altogether.
We're presently facing a constitutional crisis within the legal system. With the prospect of witnesses being paid, you have the prospect, the possibility even, that those witnesses will embellish their evidence in order to get more money from the newspapers for selling their stories. That's unacceptable in any state of system. And so there has to be a law brought in very quickly, double quick time, to prevent newspapers from buying up witnesses in advance of the trial.
Concern isn't new. In the Moores murder case in 1966, the chief prosecution witness sold his story to a newspaper. In 1979, a star witness in Jeremy Thorpe's trial was shown to have sold his story and stood to make double the money had Mr. Thorpe been convicted. There are rules on checkbook journalism designed to stop news media buying up witnesses. The newspaper watchdog, the Press Complaints Commission, has guidelines banning payments to witnesses in current criminal trials, except in the public interest. And journalists can be prosecuted for contempt of court for paying witnesses, but only if the court can prove they actively intended to pervert the course of justice. Now, the Attorney General says a change in the law is on the cards.
My hunch is that it might be changed, yes, but I'm not going to commit the government. It involves the Lord Chancellor. He is calling for a report. I'm calling for a report. The development of the criminal law is a matter for the Home Secretary.
But banning media payments in sensational cases like this raises problems. How do you define a potential witness in advance? Wouldn't a ban simply drive payments underground? Nick Hyam, BBC News.
Well, later this afternoon, I'm joined now from Cheltenham by our correspondent Clarence Mitchell. Clarence, what are we expecting from this news conference?
Well, the conference will start here in about an hour's time, and we expect the Chief Constable of Gloucestershire, Mr. Tony Butler, and the detective who led the inquiry, John Bennett, Superintendent John Bennett, to chair that meeting. And I understand that they will say the police have had a reasonable response so far to that witness appeal, the information appeal they put out regarding the 9 missing women yesterday, but that they still are seeking a lot more information. I also understand that they will say, or will talk about, what they call exaggerated media reports in today's newspapers in relation to the speculation about other sites where the Wests may have buried more victims. The police are stressing that Frederick West never admitted to any other offences other than those with which he was charged, and they will say that they have absolutely no plans to dig anywhere else at this stage.
As for these 9 people for whom they're looking still, does their response this afternoon mean that not all of them can be presumed dead by any means?
this is a point that the police from the outset have been keen to stress. They are saying that simply because they have named them, or in some cases they haven't even named them, they've just issued descriptions, they say that should not be taken to mean that they have come to harm and that there is any significance in them being named. They say that they simply are people they haven't been able to trace as a result of this huge inquiry, and that for completeness they want to make sure that they are safe and well.
Clarence Mitchell, thank you very much. Several of the West's victims were young women who had gone missing or had run away from local authority care. Every year, thousands of young people go missing, and there have been calls for national action on the problem. Our social affairs correspondent John Andrew reports.
Calls to the National Missing Persons Helpline have trebled since the Gloucestershire police appeal for information on 9 other missing women. Staff have been trying to reassure families worried that their missing relatives could be victims of people like the Wests.
We're getting a lot of calls from families who are quite distressed, worried about people who've been, their daughter, their sister, whoever, who's been missing for 10, 15, 20 years. We're also getting calls from missing people themselves, ringing up saying, I would like to make contact with my family, can you help me?
These men are looking for young runaways on the streets of London. They're police officers, members of the Juvenile Protection Unit. At least 40,000 children and teenagers run from home or care each year and make up the bulk of those reported missing. This boy is from Lancashire. He's been sleeping rough after being thrown out by his mother because of his drug habit. He says he's 18, but police suspect he's younger.
Do you want your family to know you, David, or not?
If he is, they could take him to a place of safety before contacting relatives or social services. He could still face drugs charges, but the main aim has been to offer him support and find him accommodation, something the police do for hundreds of other young people.
We'll get people that have run away from school, run away from home, or have just come up for the day without the knowledge of their parents or families. The problem is immense, and we're only scratching the surface of it.
Hostels run by the Centrepoint charity help 3,000 young people a year. Girls like Emma and Karen who ran away from family problems and ended up on the street. Both were regularly approached by strangers.
You get people come up to you, people passing by, and they say, oh, I've got a nice warm bed, you can come and stay at my flat. You know, do you want to come with me? And it's like, especially if they're really weird sort of looking people, you think again, you say, no, I'm all right where I am.
You split in two minds, really. You're thinking, no, you can't go. Because, one, you could like being raped, murdered or beaten up, and you will not see the next day. And then you think, yeah, why don't you go? Because it is a roof over your head.
When the Wests first began preying on vulnerable teenage girls, there was no comprehensive safety net for children deemed to be at risk. That gap has now been filled by the Children Act, but the reality is that many are still falling through the net, facing dangers as great as ever. John Andrew, BBC News, Central London.
The Republic of Ireland.
My inclination is that the press would not be so interested in the witnesses' stories by that time.
Michael Mansfield, thank you very much.